sometimes the light just going through. The sound of my mom cutting a piece of pork belly, like onion and garlic to saute. The smell of the meat being grilled. So these are the things that I remember, very simple. For me, and I think a lot of other Vietnamese people, when we live abroad, what we remember are the stuff that we eat at home. What your mom cooked for you. There are things that are usually very simple types of stuff become more important. Something like rice with ramen. They're very different fields, and I think a big part of it is really the passion that's in here. It's more than a job and making money. It's about the love of food and cooking. The possibility of the food can connect people and to do something new, interesting. I think my cooking style reflects who I am. Part of my identity is being VQ, an overseas Vietnamese. I have lived in many places in Hong Kong, New York, and London before I returned to Vietnam 2 years ago. And this experience is reflected in the way that I cook, which is, for me, we want the food to be distinctively Vietnamese in flavor in the way we eat, but at the same time have an international focus also too. Saigon and Vietnam is changing very quickly, and I think the food also can and should change at the same time as well too. You look at many of the restaurants in Vietnam or Saigon currently, they take a very traditional approach to presenting Vietnamese food. We are different in the sense that we take a more modern approach. Many of our dishes are based on the street food or traditional dishes, but we make them new and different again. So you look at some of the example of our signature dishes now. For example, we have the bánh xèo taco that looks like a bánh xèo but tastes like a Mexican taco. It's a new experience for people when you want to, but still it is all the ingredient inside. It tastes like a Vietnamese bánh xèo. The Đà Lạt pizza, which is basically a grilled rice paper base. We put local real cheese on top, and so it has a combination of both being Vietnamese and international at the same time without Đà Lạt style pizza, for example. Another one could be, for example, something like sườn nướng, which is a very typical dish you see on the street in Saigon everywhere. So basically it's pork that's been grilled with lemongrass. We cook this, what we call sous vide, with a modern technique for about 6 hours to keep the moisture, and then we grill it and we cut it so it looks like a piece of steak. It tastes like the Vietnamese sườn nướng, but it's new and different. Some people call the cooking that we do at Ang Saigon now is fusion, which is fine, but I would prefer to call it modern or new Vietnamese cuisine. Because we're trying to elevate and redefine what Vietnamese food can be. It doesn't have to be stuck in the traditional always. For people outside of Vietnam, when they think about Vietnam food culture, usually two things come to their mind. The first thing is usually pho, and then the second thing is the bánh mì. So these are the two iconic dishes that associate with the Vietnamese cuisine, particularly outside of Vietnam. When they think about pho, bánh mì, or Vietnamese cuisine in general, they think it's really good, tasty, but it has to be cheap also too. You can get the bánh mì outside for about 20,000 dong, or for maybe for 60,000 dong, so it's about $1 to $2 US. And we take something like that and we make something that is $100.
And a lot of you suggested I go try the $100 banh mi and the $100 bowl of pho. I am curious to see what actually goes inside a bowl of $100 pho and what goes inside a sandwich that costs $100.
With the $100 pho and bánh mì, we do something that's a little bit crazy. First, it's a bit of a shock to people. So we have probably the most expensive pho and the most expensive bánh mì in the world, right here in Saigon. Part of the reason is we also just really want to people to really rethink of what Vietnamese food or the sandwich or the pho can be by doing something new, taking a new and different approach to it. With the $100 price tag, it gets people attention. We use now 7 different kinds of beef, and each one is cooked differently. So we have also Wagyu inside. We use an US beef rib that we cook for 24 hours. Our broth is a 2-day cooking process. So we go through a very meticulous cooking process to produce something that is special. With the bánh mì, we take a sandwich which is already one of the best sandwiches in the world already. With different pork products inside, with the light baguette, with the Vietnamese herbs and pickle. But what we add is we add a little bit of luxury to that with the French foie gras, Italian black truffle, and then a little bit of caviar on the side, for example, to change the experience of eating the bánh mì. When people traveling or they come into Vietnam from other places, I think it's about the experience. Food is very important too, but in the end of the day, it's something you eat. And I think with $100 pho and bánh mì, number one, we create curiosity in people. They wonder what this thing is. Because of that, they want to try. They want to know. When people travel, they eat many things or they spend a lot of money, but they sometimes don't remember the experience. So with the $100 pho, bánh mì, I can tell you, they will remember, if not the price tag.
Wow, look at this. This bowl of pho is not only hot, it's not only simmering, it's absolutely boiling. I mean, this is
the $100 pho and bánh mì, they're not on our regular menu. We call them as off-menu item. So they would have to actually book at least 1 day in advance.
If I just put my
So we do get sometimes, for example, some people travel to Vietnam only for a few days, or they don't realize they have to book. Sometimes they are disappointed when they cannot get it.
Tôi có những cái vị khách nước ngoài thì tôi có thể mời họ về đây. Mọi người đều wow, họ nhìn vô đây wow, surprise, và họ cảm thấy là wow, đó thì rất là đặc biệt và chỉ có Việt Nam mới có, và đúng là cái hương vị và cái đặc sắc của Việt Nam.
I was born in Kodak. It's a small village. It used to be a tea plantation the French built. The school nearby where I go to the school. Going to the market with my mom because the market is right next to her house and the restaurant. Other things is when I was small, then maybe I would play with some of the other kids, some small games on the street, or sometimes we go into the fields to pick some wild berries.
It looks a lot smaller than I remember when I was a kid. We used to have to walk all the way from the village, walk up every day to come up to school. So it's a lot of work. Classroom I went to in here, you see it? We used to play in the ground here. We can see the village down the bottom there.
I left Vietnam when I was about 12 years old and I went to the US and I was adopted by an American family. I went to Yale University to study. After I graduated from Yale, I was working for investment bank in Hong Kong. So I did that for quite a long time. Then I graduated and decided, okay, now it's time to make a change. So I went to the French cooking school called Le Cordon Bleu to study French cooking for a year. Certain things that we remember all the time. As I grow up and I lived in many countries outside of Vietnam, I think part of the kitchen I remember just sometimes the light just going through. The sound of my mom maybe cutting a piece of pork. The process of making the mì Quảng is you take a piece of pork, like onion and garlic to saute. So there's the sound, the smell that coming through after it's been cooked. When making nem nướng, she has to pound the meat, so there's the sound of the pork meat being pounded and then make into the meatballs. After that, it's just the smell of the meat being grilled, watching the fire. So these are the things that I remember, very simple types of stuff. My mom is still in Kodak. I'm sometimes very busy right now, but I try to go back every 3 to 6 months. I take a trip back to see her. Her leg getting weaker, and her health is not as strong as before, but her mind is extremely strong. She's very aware of everything. She still has a good sense of humor. She can remember everything, and she's always been a very strong, independent person. My mom is actually originally from Quảng Ngãi, so many of her dishes have that influence. So she's famous for nem nướng and also mì Quảng.
Con có tôm, con có thịt và con có sườn đó, má cho con làm.
Chạc xương, rồi giá tôm.
I grew up basically spending most of my time in my mom's kitchen. So food was always a presence all the time. So I grew up eating those dishes often and watching my mom cook those things. So those dishes, for example, are very close to my heart.
Được rồi.
Rồi, được rồi.
Nhỏ hun rồi.
It's very simple, traditional Vietnamese kitchen, basically with 1 or 2 charcoal fire with a pan. And she would have a couple of tables out in front for the customers to come and eat. So it's a very simple, traditional Vietnamese kitchen, and she used that to serve food to people in the village, basically.
Sườn nó để lại hả?
Dạ, sườn đó mình để lại tại vì có nhiều sườn rồi mà nhiều thịt không ngon phải không? Bây giờ hành này vô nước sẽ ra mấy anh. Cho nước
Cho tôm hả?
cho tôm nè, rồi.
Chừng nóng á. Nóng. Ok.
Ok. Ok. Okay guys, these are the Mi Wang coming from Banoi's hometown, and so this is one of her famous dishes from from Quang Nam. That's where she was born, and she came to the lab when she was very young. So this dish is very special because it comes from her family. You can mix it together, taste the broth first. Okay. And shrimp.
Vừa ăn hả không?
Dạ vừa rồi.
Nhưng mà nấu riết là không.
Không, thường thì nó nấu mà mặn quá. Nhưng mà hiện tại cái này vừa rồi.
It's very good. I don't normally have very spicy food. This is very nice though. It's not. It's a light sort of spicy, sort of addictive.
Do you like it?
Yeah, I do.
I worked in many of the fine dining restaurants all over the world, and then I opened 2 restaurants in Hong Kong. One called Chum Chum, another one called Viet Kitchen, and both of those were very successful. About 2 years ago, I decided to return to Saigon to do something new and different here. That's why we opened An Saigon about 2 years ago. For me, the name is very important to the identity of the restaurant. So I spent a lot of time trying to come up with something that reflects the identity. For the Vietnamese people, An or Cơm is very important. The Vietnamese language is monosyllabic. We have only 1 syllable per word. So I decided to kind of put the 2 together, An and An together, to create the name of the restaurant. Even in our food, we take a little bit of a playful, modern approach to the food, and that's why we want also the name to be, there's some fun in the name in itself. You know, part of the reason I came back to Saigon is to do something new and make a difference. And I think right now Saigon is probably one of the most dynamic, exciting cities in the world, particularly for food. So it has a lot of potential, but I think right now we're not quite on the global culinary map yet. And I think, but it has a lot of potential. We have to produce food and restaurant within international standards, and we're not quite there yet. So first we have to improve the quality of everything. When we look at the restaurant, there's food, there's service, there's design, there's music, and all these elements have to be done well to an international standards. I think we have all the elements to be one of the world-class global city where people actually come to Saigon, to Vietnam to eat. I'm very optimistic that I think over the next few years we will develop more, and I think we will get more international attention. You know, at An Saigon, what we're aiming to do is really, elevate the Vietnamese cuisine from, let's say, street food, traditional food, into more gourmet and fine dining level. I'm from this place, and we have a restaurant that is actually based inside the market that's very connected to the Vietnamese ingredient, Vietnamese dishes. but we take a more modern approach. By combining this kind of local with an international modern approach, I think we can create something new that I think could be of interest to not only the Vietnamese people here, but also people outside of Vietnam as well too. The heart and soul of the food of Vietnamese cuisine, when you look at it, there's really two categories. One is the food that we eat at home. We call ăn cơm, for example, that are rice-based, let's say with rau muống, rice, or thịt luộc with rice, and these are the core of the traditional Vietnamese eating. And then we have another category we call ăn chơi, which is the food that's eaten outside the home. When we're talking about, let's say, nhậu, eating, or when we talk about the bánh mì, we talk about phở. I get a lot of the inspirations and ideas from going out to traditional places, street food places, and drinking and eating with friends. Whether it be street food or beer hall places, sometimes I discover something new that is special, and sometimes I take those ideas back and sometimes we play with them. I think food is very important for Vietnamese people, but I think for me,
And one piece of the crispy.
because my mom cooks all the time, and that's her life. And also the appreciation of good food, good cooking, because that's the environment I grew up in, so that is what I absorb inside me. Although I do go out and play with kids sometime, but whenever I'm at home, then this is what I see all the time. So as a result of that, food is a very important part of who I am. That's part of the reason why I returned to cooking to become a chef after a career in banking. For me, nem nướng is one of my favorite to eat because it has a lot of herbs, and you have the bánh tráng, you can wrap it, and then it's a fun way to eat. Whenever I go back and visit her, normally she tries to make that for me, for example. And now that I'm older, she usually get me like a beer or something like that to enjoy with the nem nướng, which is a nice thing to do. They're very different fields, and I get a lot of questions from people, you know, how does someone who's used to work in investment banking become a successful chef? I think a big part of it is really the passion that's in here and how you feel about the food to start with. They're both very demanding and challenging job with a lot of expectations. I think in the cooking, you get to be more creative, you get to do some new things and make maybe to some extent for me a bigger difference. It's more than a job and making money, it's about the love of food and cooking, and the possibility of the food can connect people and to do something new and interesting. For me, and I think a lot of other Vietnamese people, when we live abroad, what we remember are the stuff that we eat at home, what your mom cooked for you. There are things that are easy, very simple types of stuff become more important. Something like rice with the rau muống that is everywhere in Vietnam. They're cheap, but in the US, for example, or Hong Kong, they're not available, not cooked the Vietnamese way. So sometimes you remember very simple things like that. Vietnam for me is still my mom, you know, so we call the motherland for that reason. And I think as I grow up and do many things, I'm still a kid. I'm still see myself as a son, you know. So those certain images stay with me all the time. It doesn't change.